The French president has flagged the prospect of sending European peacekeepers to Ukraine if it helps end Russia's war there. Emmanuel Macron made the comments as part of a mercy dash to the US, where he's meeting President Donald Trump.
The high-level talks come as a US resolution to end the war without mentioning Moscow's aggression failed to get UN General Assembly approval. Well, there's a lot to get across this morning, so let's bring in our Washington Bureau Chief, Jade McMillan. G'day, Jade. First to this meeting between Donald Trump and Emmanuel Macron, which has just wrapped up. What have the leaders been discussing?
Well, this meeting, James, comes at a really critical moment, 3 years since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine began, and at a time when Donald Trump is pushing for a deal to be reached to end this conflict. He has abruptly shifted the US position towards the war in Ukraine, in the process ending Joe Biden's attempts to isolate the Russian President Vladimir Putin, instead holding direct talks with the Russian leader and arguing that a peace agreement has to be negotiated. Now, Donald Trump said in the Oval Office, as he sat alongside the French President Emmanuel Macron, that he believes the war could be brought to an end within weeks. He has repeatedly argued that Ukraine should reach a deal with the United States over critical minerals, that deal would in part be in exchange for US security assistance. And Donald Trump suggested to reporters in that room that he expects the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy to come to Washington in the next couple of weeks to sign an agreement. That is despite the Ukrainian president having previously pushed back against that idea. Donald Trump was also asked whether he believes if Ukraine should have to give up part of its territory as part of an agreement. Donald Trump said that we'd have to see, that negotiations are just starting, so didn't provide any detail over what that could involve. But we know that the US Defence Secretary has previously said that Ukraine can't expect to get all of its territory back. Now, Emmanuel Macron in that meeting, as you referred earlier, did say that Europe would be prepared to send peacekeepers to Ukraine once a peace agreement was reached. Donald Trump said that he believed Vladimir Putin would accept that proposal. Emmanuel Macron had also said ahead of this meeting, heading into these talks in Washington, that he'd be trying to convince Donald Trump that any deal that made him, trying to convince him against striking any deal that would make him look weak in the eyes of Vladimir Putin, that would send a message to China, for example. So really still so much uncertainty over what this is ultimately going to mean for Ukraine. We are expecting to hear more from both the French and the US leaders later on today when they hold a joint press conference. But in the meantime, here is some of what Donald Trump had to say in that Oval Office meeting.
But on a humanitarian basis, we have to get this very, very bloody, savage problem solved. And I will say this also, it could lead to World War III if it's not solved.
And Jade, the UN has also been focused on the war in Ukraine today. What's happened there?
Yeah, there were competing resolutions put forward in the UN General Assembly. The US was pushing for a resolution that would call for an end to the war without mentioning Moscow's aggression. A European-backed Ukrainian resolution, on the other hand, demanded that Russia immediately withdraw. Now, it was that second resolution that was endorsed by the UN General Assembly, so somewhat of a setback for the Trump administration, but in just pushing for this resolution, it again signals that major shift that we have seen from the United States since Donald Trump returned to power. Now, resolutions in the UN General Assembly are not binding, but the Security Council is also due to debate the war in Ukraine on this third anniversary later today. Russia has a veto power in the Council, so we'll have to see how that plays out.
All right, Jade McMillan in Washington, thank you.